I'm Noor Azimah. I'm working in the medical faculty. I'm a family physician, and I would like to share our project on a qualitative study which was conducted among young people in Malaysia. As an introduction, as we know, sexual development and activity is a natural process. There's an interplay between biological hormones, cognitive development, socio-political and religious factors. These are the facts. Therefore, sexual activity and its acceptance varies between countries. Malaysia is an Islamic country with predominantly Muslim people. Therefore, we do not accept premarital sex. Interventions to fight sexual activity among youth has been carried out for more than 2 decades. And the interventions include sexual abstinence campaign, sex education in school, as well as the existing laws to protect the minors. Despite interventions, premarital sex does exist in our youth. A number of them are sexually active and persistently to be sexually active. As high as 13% of our young people are practicing premarital sex. Therefore, lead to our research question: why do sexually active youth continue to practice premarital sex despite the social and religious restrictions? The aim of this paper is to understand the reason why sexually active youth continue to practice premarital sex, and we would like to also understand the reason why the not sexually active youth manage to abstain from such activity. The sample population of this study includes Malaysian college students studying in Kuala Lumpur and the nearby suburbs. We used individual in-depth interview to conduct this study. It was a qualitative study using purposive sampling technique. 15 interviews were conducted involving college students aged 18 to 22 years old. We used semi-structured interview protocol to guide the interview, and the interview began with, nowadays quite a number of students and adolescents are sexually active. What do you think about that? And we give time for them to give their views. Following that, we focus straight to their sexual practice. Let's focus on you. Have you ever had sexual intercourse? Are you currently sexually active, and why? All these interviews were recorded using digital audio recorders. Field notes were written during and post the interviews. At the end of each in-depth interview, the data was summarized, the interview was summarized, and important findings were verified with the participants. It was an iterative process of listening and transcribing the interviews into the text by the main researcher. We used inductive thematic analysis to analyze the data, to produce the codes, and the coding was cross-examined by 3 other investigators to define and refine the codes. Me being the main investigator of this project, I'm a family physician with a special interest in adolescent health. I run an adolescent clinic at University Kebangsaan Malaysia, the National University of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur, and I've actually positioned myself purely as a researcher when I did the interviews, and there was no clinical advice was given during the interview. I've consciously identified and reminded myself on the possibility of personal bias during the conduct of the interview as well as during the data analysis. This study has obtained the permission from the UKM Ethical Committee, Ministry of Education, principals of each college, and all the informed participants have given their consent. So, as for the results, from the 15 interviews conducted, there were 7 sexually active youth and 8 not sexually active, and from there were 8 females and 7 males. And the population, the age range of this group was from 18 to 22 years old, and the there are Malays, Chinese, as well as Indians. There are also Muslim, Christians, Buddhists, and Hindus. So the first theme that I would like to highlight that emerged from the interviews was sexual desire and addiction. As a P5, a male student with multiple partners, he was actually laughing away when I asked whether he really loved the girl that he had sex with. And he just said, perhaps a little, but the girls before this, but not the current partner. And he added, I cannot control my desire. I'm just addicted to sex. And another participant, P6, a male, again with multiple partners, he explained, the girls are seducing, sometimes it's me. That strong sexual desire makes me crazy, and I don't think anything else other than having sex. When we do sex, we just want to find pleasure and the need to satisfy our sexual desire and nothing else. And in contrast, for a female who are sexually active, because being in a conservative country, the females were a bit more reserved when discussing about sexual desire. And one of the participants, however, admitted that whenever there is a sexual request from the partner, she would actually do not deny it. So as P6, a female with multiple partners, lust was the main reason for having sex. And she felt satisfied after each sexual activity. And to the views of the not sexually active, they actually felt, yes, their friends who are sexually active really addicted to the sexual activity. As P8, a female, said, once you experience sex, you really want to have more and more. And P2, a female, another female, she said, I don't know how to say, yes, it's not right, but they are just addicted to it. The second theme that emerged from the interviews was these youth who are sexually active, they are very efficient in fulfilling their sexual needs. They know when, where, with whom, and how to perform the sexual activity. Usually, as one said, usually we were careful. We only entered the hotel when we felt safe, and we had made sure there was no suspicious person. In contrast, the not sexually active, they are very firm in their decision. They know when to say no and how to say no. As one of the participants said, I'm ready to end the relationship if my boyfriend asks for sex. Once we get married, then I'm willing. As long as he's still not my husband, I will never. This is the voice of the not sexually active youth. The third theme is the sexually active youth are basically, they are self-centered, they only think about themselves, and they are defiant, they just do things against the existing rules, the parental restriction, for example. So as P3, a female, she said, my mother did not allow me to go out with my boyfriend, but since I'm staying in hostel, there were times that we went out, my boyfriend and me, because my mother wouldn't know. So she just did whatever that she wants out of the mother's permission. And as P5, a male participant said, I don't ask permission. Sometimes I would call and inform my mother my whereabouts, otherwise he would. In contrast, the sexually active youth, they were actually considerate and obedient. As one of the participants said, we need to keep our family's good name. We don't tarnish our family's pride by running away from home with boyfriends to do sex. I don't want to have a boyfriend. I don't want to fall in love, as I know my mother would not like it, and she would be sad. Furthermore, my father is not well, so I don't want to hurt my mother anymore. And the third point that I would like to highlight, having a religion actually would benefit the people. And in this context, the young people, high religiosity had actually somehow put the guidance for the not sexually active. Their high frequency of sexual activity and performance, as well as their prayers, and their strong faith has actually protected them from practicing sex. As P10, a female participant said, I think having strong faith in religion is important. If the person is religious, he or she would not do that. And another male participant said, when we perform our prayer regularly, it can control us, so we don't think about other things. If the person don't pray, he will think of many things, including sex. And in contrast, for the sexually active youth, they do not really practice religion. They don't really do their 5-time prayers, or even if they are not Muslim, they don't really visit the temple for their prayers. So P7, a male participant, he said, I know sex is sinful, but what to do? I just ignore it. As my friend says, the opportunity is there, why I need to waste. And P6, another male participant, he said, my weak faith, I don't pray enough. Perhaps my prayers are not enough and incomplete. It is not accepted by God, so that's why I tend to follow the devil. So for discussion, sexual desire is when a person feels motivated to engage in sexual activity and anticipate a rewarding experience. Youth continue to be sexually active following their first pleasurable experience. They have the sexual urges or desire whenever they were triggered. They lure from their partners or sensual girls. Females were a bit conservative in discussing about their sexual desire, but they would not reject sexual requests. As opposed to males, they were more forthcoming. They admitted they had difficulty to control the strong sexual desire. Frequent and repetitive intense sexual desire is known as sexual compulsivity or sexual addiction. Sexually active youth were focusing on the sexual needs rather than the associated risks. Despite their knowledge of sexual and reproductive health, they continue to practice unsafe sex. They had sex with casual partners, they have multiple partners, they have sex without condom or contraception. These youth felt they are addicted to sex and they had to fulfill their sexual needs at the expense of ignoring religious, parental, societal restrictions, and they practiced unsafe sexual practices. Whenever they were triggered, they have the urge and desire. They were not able to control themselves with this sudden urge and desire. They had the compulsion to satisfy the sexual needs. And they feel there's a sense of gratification once they've performed that. The sexually active youth continue to be sexually active as it is emotionally rewarding. They were efficient in fulfilling their sexual needs. As I mentioned, they know how, when, where to do it. There is a feeling of enjoyment and achievement of being defiant and doing things against parental, religious, and societal restrictions. Living arrangement is another participating factor. Staying away from parents gives them wider opportunities to do their activities, such as spending time with their partners, loitering, clubbing, and night outings. These lifestyle activities has increased the risk of the engagement in sexual activity. In conclusion, strong sexual desire and addiction, as well as gaining emotional pleasure, drive the youth to continue to be sexually active. I would like to just summarize the finding of our study into this picture. The presence of triggers in the environment together with the pleasurable experience would lead to the sexual urge and desire, which will then lead to the sexual compulsion, and being the self-centered, defiant, and self-efficient will make the sexually active youth continue to be sexually active, and the sense of gratification following that would actually perpetuate the activity. With that, I thank you.